Imagine sending your child to school in the morning, watching them walk into a building meant for prayer and safety, only to get a phone call hours later saying shots rang out inside the sanctuary. 2 children never made it home, 17 others now carry scars, some physical, some emotional, that will last a lifetime. This is not just a story about Minneapolis, this is a story about all of us, about the terrifying reality of how America continues to fail its children, even in the holiest of places. The shooting took place inside Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis. During morning mass, children were in pews, heads bowed, when gunfire suddenly erupted. 8th grader Javen Willis whispered to his friends, "Get down and go under the pew." In that instant, prayers turned to panic. Parents rushed to the scene, cell phones shaking in their hands, desperate to know if their child was alive. One father described holding his daughter after the chaos. "She cried, telling him she thought she was going to die." Now pause for a moment. Can you imagine hearing those words from your 11-year-old? This was not random noise. Witnesses said the shots echoed like thunder inside the church. Some children froze, others ran, but none will ever forget the sound. One man, Pat Scollin, ran into the scene. He did not know what he would find, but he found 3 children bleeding, one gasping for air. He knelt, held a little hand, and refused to let go until medics arrived. Stories like this make you wonder, how do ordinary people summon bravery in moments where the world collapses around them?
And while chaos unfolded inside Annunciation, down the road at Holy Angels High School, news spread fast. Students learned siblings and friends were inside the church. Elizabeth Payne, just 17, recalled watching her classmates break down, the look of terror frozen on their faces. Imagine being in that moment, your little brother or sister possibly shot, and you are stuck in a classroom, powerless. That fear, that helplessness, it's something these teenagers will carry long after the headlines fade. So who was responsible for this? Authorities identified the suspect as Westman, a name now synonymous with destruction. Westman legally purchased 3 weapons, a rifle, a pistol, and a shotgun. Just weeks before the attack, investigators found journals filled with disturbing obsessions, mass shootings, racism, depression, and death, written cryptically, using Russian Cyrillic letters to disguise English words. The journals revealed an obsession with violence. But here's the haunting question: how many warning signs must society ignore before tragedy strikes again? Even more chilling, Westman carved words onto the weapons themselves, phrases like "kill Donald Trump," anti-Semitic slurs, and references to the Holocaust. These were not just weapons, they were statements of hate. And yet, despite these red flags, these firearms were purchased legally. Police now say they have recovered even more weapons from 3 different residences connected to the suspect. Does this sound like someone who slipped through the cracks, or someone who marched straight through wide-open doors society left unlocked?
Adding to the eerie puzzle, Westman's own mother once worked at the very church where the massacre unfolded. Her retirement was celebrated just a few years ago. A Facebook post showing smiling faces and gratitude. That post has since been deleted, wiped clean in the aftermath of bloodshed. But ask yourself, was this personal? Was the connection to the church symbolic? Or was this simply the chosen stage for a larger, hateful performance? In the hours after the shooting, the community gathered for vigils. Archbishop Bernard Hebda stood before grieving parents and terrified children, reminding them of hope. He acknowledged the pain, the overwhelming grief, but urged people to remain men and women of hope. That's easy to say when the candles are lit and hymns are sung, but for parents who put their children to bed tonight with empty chairs at the dinner table, hope feels like a cruel word. Governor Tim Walz ordered flags to fly at half-staff, calling the act senseless violence that devastated a sacred place. President Biden, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton all released statements offering condolences and prayers, but Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey delivered perhaps the bluntest message: thoughts and prayers are not enough. These kids were literally praying when they were shot. Think about that, children in God's house, doing what parents teach them to do in times of fear: pray, and it still was not enough to save them. And yet, amid grief, there is survival. Hospitals admitted 7 children between the ages of 9 and 16. 4 have already been released. 3 remain. Some will walk out with bandages, others with nightmares. One boy, just 13, said, "I was one of the lucky ones." Imagine the weight of that sentence, knowing you lived when your classmates did not. Survivor's guilt does not end when the cameras leave. It lingers, it grows, and it eats at young hearts not yet equipped to carry it. This shooting shooting does not exist in a vacuum. Minnesota Representative Emma Greenman spoke for many when she said, "This is not just a Minnesota issue. This is a national issue." She's right. From Sandy Hook to Uvalde, from Columbine to Parkland, we have heard the same cries, "Never again." Yet here we are, again. America is a community of communities, each taking turns joining this tragic circle of grief. The question is, why does the circle keep
First
growing?
Lady Melania Trump added her voice, calling for preemptive intervention. She argued there are always warning signs, social media threats, disturbing behaviors, cries for help ignored. She's not wrong. Time after time, shooters have broadcast their intentions, yet nothing happens until bullets fly. Why? Is it a failure of law enforcement, a failure of schools, or a failure of society to take these signals seriously? These are uncomfortable questions, but ignoring them guarantees more funerals. Here's where fear becomes unavoidable. The suspect in this case was not on a watch list. She was not a convicted criminal. She bought her guns legally, just like millions of other Americans do every year. If someone with journals glorifying mass shootings can still walk into a store and walk out with 3 weapons, what does safety even mean? And if we cannot stop it at the purchase point, then how many more parents will bury children before something changes? Community trauma does not vanish after vigils. Ask survivors of Columbine, 25 years later, the scars remain. Ask Sandy Hook parents. Over a decade has passed, but the pain feels eternal. Now Minneapolis joins that list, forever branded by violence. The children who hid under pews, the ones who froze in terror, will replay those seconds for the rest of their lives. And here's the haunting loop. Today's survivors can become tomorrow's advocates, tomorrow's activists, but also tomorrow's broken adults if we do not step in with real support. So where do we go from here? It's tempting to say never again, to post hashtags, to light candles, but as Mayor Frey warned, this is not a moment for hate. It is a moment to act. Leaders will debate policy, parents will demand answers, and communities will brace themselves for the next headline. But maybe the real question is not, when will this stop? Maybe the question is, what will it take for us to stop being numb and start being angry enough to force change? 2 children are gone, 17 others are injured, hundreds are scarred, and a nation is left to once again whisper, why? But if you have made it this far, you know this is not about just one city or one school. It's about all of us. That's why in my next video, we are breaking down the chilling warning signs that appear before nearly every school shooting, the same signals authorities missed here in Minneapolis. Because if we do not start recognizing the patterns, this tragedy will repeat itself again and again and again. So click here to watch that investigation, and let's demand answers together.